Air conditioning is the South's savior. We weren't people that were necessarily lazy. We were just people that were hot. DC and AD is the way most people measure time, but here in the South we measure time before air conditioning and after air conditioning, because yes, it made that much difference in our lives.
It's a neat idea, Mr. Gregerson. He's a very patriotic, unique person who is very civic-minded and has done a lot of good things over the years. And to say thank you for air conditioning, one way that people could say really thank you is to go one day without it in the summer. I know at my church, I was a finance chairman, and we needed to buy some new air conditioning. And we just kept patching it, and some of the people, the trustees said, well, let's just wait. And I said, all we got to do is turn it off one Sunday, and we'll get enough donations to put in the new air conditioning units. And, it'll be a neat thing. But you got a lot of people who, I say, once you get out of the baby boomer segment, who have never had to do without air.
This is something that's been on my heart for a long time. As I think about the blessings that it's been for me to live in Alabama, and I thought as to why it should be that I was here for so long, and I thought about why I even came to Alabama, and it turns out that one of the really tipping points was air conditioning. It really meant a great deal to me. I'd been raised in Iowa and lived a good while in northern Illinois, and air conditioning was not such a big factor in my life. But when I came down here in the South, the question was, would I stay or not? I had an opportunity, a tremendous opportunity, to help run the great Kroger supermarket company, and the alternative was to come to Alabama. And I thought about it a good while, and of course the living here is so much better than it is other places. A great place to raise my kids, and I love the terrain, I love the people. The one thing that was going to be a problem was the summer heat. I cannot cope with it, I cannot handle it. I lose energy as a result of too much heat. So as I look back on my time here, it came to me that I am so grateful to Willis Haviland Carrier for his invention, because it's meant a difference in my life. I wouldn't be here without it. And the more I thought about it, I was convinced that what I needed to do was in some way call attention to it, because as I looked around, there were many other people in the same boat that were here because air conditioning made life livable if you were needing a cooler environment where the humidity and the heat was controlled. So it stayed inside of me for years, and I talked with a number of people about it, something that was no more than right. Every time I ever brought it up, people would just smile and say, oh, you're so right. It's changed my life. It was so important to me. And so I got to thinking, maybe it wasn't just me. Maybe we all would live better lives, more comfortable. And I think of the people in hospitals on a sweltering day and then without air conditioning. I think of school kids trying to learn without air conditioning and with air conditioning. I think of the road rage that is lessened as a result of air conditioning in automobile. The more I thought about it, the more I was convinced that this is something that everybody could be a part of and should be a part of, and that this community has so much in it in the way of attitude of gratitude, a grateful attitude, a thankful attitude. So it wasn't as though I thought this is gonna be a hard sell, because everywhere people would agree with me and say we're all living better lives because of air conditioning. So I think the question is not whether air conditioning is a tremendously important part of our life, but is it important for us to do something? Is it important to stop and say thank you? And so the whole effort here is to get as many people from the community to share in this effort, and together we say thank you for something that has changed our lives in a very profound and almost immeasurable way. So it's something that's important. We're all proud to be a part of it, and that's the story in a nutshell.
From the start, which with this project about 3 or 4 months ago, first heard about it, I had a tremendous interest in it just because of my background working in the mechanical industry and being an artist. It kind of meshed together, and then in my hometown as well. It just kind of all came together and seemed like it fit me. But I'm very excited about it. I've met with the board, committee members, and we've talked about several different things and kicked around a lot of different ideas. I think this is going to be a tremendous asset to Gadsden. I think Gadsden will benefit, will be recognized for the tremendous amount of work that they put into the process of just bringing about thankfulness for the air conditioning. I'll never forget coming up as a kid over in East Gadsden. We lived on Barksdale, and we rented a house, a little small house, 3-bedroom house, and I was probably around 10 or 11 years old when we got our first air conditioning. It was a window unit, came from Sears and Roebuck, and I can remember my dad installing it. He's an electrician, so he had to run a 220 line to that area, I guess it was, at that time. And but I can remember turning that thing on, and we had a chair, a sofa right up against that area, that window, and me and my brother both was just up there just immediately with that cold air blowing on us. And I don't know, we may have stayed there for an hour. It was a long time, but we really enjoyed it. But I can remember running down that hall or running over to that area and jumping up on that sofa and just having that air blowing on me. It was a magic moment.
When you went to church, you had your hat. The girls had hats, gloves, they wore hose and heels and a dress. And of course you had all the undergarments that one wears with a dress. And if it was the kind where, if it was the fashion to wear like petticoats, you had your share on. That must have been thinking back on it, but we thought that was okay. Also, we didn't have hairspray. You couldn't run down and get your hairspray. So can you imagine our hair? And very few people had permanents. That was just a brand new raincoat. So there you were, wilted, melted down, and and thought you looked gorgeous, because you did the last time you looked in the mirror before you left home. Daddy was a surgeon, and of course you can imagine hospitals were not air conditioned, and the surgical rooms were not air conditioned. And so all those people with all of those masks and the hats and the gowns on We're standing up there sweltering under those huge lights. You can just imagine those lights. And one time, I asked him if I could watch surgery, and the lady that was having the surgery said, okay, it's fine. So I went in, and they put me on a little step stool so I could watch. And the only thing that I found almost unbearable with the lights, they were so horribly hot. I just don't know how people did it. And people did not heal as well in the summer. If you had elective surgery, golly, you waited until it was closer to winter time, cool air. People healed better. They didn't heal in the heat.
This was the original drawing that I turned in when I was actually submitting, for possibly, getting this commission, this particular project, coming out of the wall at you. And that was sort of my concept, was you're sitting in your living room or your den, you've got a DVD, LCD screen here, watching a movie, you've got pictures on the wall, mosaics, books, here's candelabras, and so this, and then it's all smothered and surrounded by this big air conditioning unit that means so much to us today. Well, here's one thing we did. I had chill, and that was a change we made, and we changed that to cool, and everybody was telling me that's what Bobby says a lot, cool. Everything's cool. And then they had this kind of this cool theme going on as well. So it really made sense to change that to cool versus chill. And but it was such a unique or odd idea at first to me. I think it was to everybody, even the committee. When I talked to the committee, they knew that it was going to be somewhat unique and different and everything. But that's really what art is, And you talk about out of the box. I tell people this thing's out of the box to the third power. But I tell you, the neatest thing about doing a project like this is the new people that you meet. Just like here, I knew, I of course, being from Gadsden, I'm familiar with the Art Center, but I didn't know the people here very well. I didn't know most of the people at all, and so it's always unique to actually make those new friendships. They actually came to Augusta and spent the day with us, and came into the studio and saw the sculpture, probably 80% complete. And so, as much as I love the art and I love doing this, the friendships and the people that you meet are really the greatest. It's the greatest part of the whole thing.
I got a call from a hospice group and wanted to know if I had an air conditioner, a used air conditioner that I could loan them. Somebody was going through the process of dying, and hospice was trying to make them as comfortable as possible. And the one thing they needed to make this person comfortable was an air conditioner, because they didn't have an air conditioner. And I'm proud to say we had one we let them borrow. And the process of going through hospice only took about 2 weeks, so we had him back within 2 weeks. But I was so glad that we were in a position to let them borrow one and ease the pain and suffering that somebody was going through. And to me, that's the kind of thing air conditioning represents. I'm grateful for air conditioning, and I'm grateful that the center has taken on this project, and that there'll be a permanent monument to air conditioning here in the facility. And isn't it wonderful that a community like Gadsden's taken on this project?
These are actually mosaics as well, these three. And then there's another one, go right here. And it's the Pittman Theater.
The early movie theaters in downtown Gadsden, products of the teens and 20s, were cooled with giant fans. These huge oscillating fans were used to cool the movie patrons and try to entice them to come into these auditoriums, these small, medium-sized auditoriums. But the Pittman, unlike these earlier theaters, offered true air conditioning. The Princess, once again, had an air conditioning system that was added back in the 1930s, and it boasted being a cool place to go. But the Pittman offered the true air conditioning system of the late 1940s.
We're now in the auditorium of the theater, the once beautiful Pittman Theater. Several years ago, the Pittman had set more or less just locked up and vacant. The theater was had fallen into a very bad state of disrepair. Today it's in the process of hopefully being restored to its once beautiful glory days. More than 1,000 movie patrons could sit and watch movies and entertainment in air-conditioned and heated comfort during the summer and winter months. Now the heating and cooling system is practically non-existent. It will take quite an undertaking to renovate and restore this beautiful movie house to its once spectacular self. The theater that used to house the kiddie matinees of the 1960s when you could get in for 6 RC bottle caps has quite a way to go before it can once again show movies and show live productions.
In 2008, we had the idea of performing inside the Pittman. I've done these things before called site-specific performances, where you embrace the space itself. And the Pittman being such a historic theater to Gadsden, such an asset to the community, I wanted to do something inside there just as a from a creative standpoint. We went to view the building and realized that there was no human there. It's an incredible space with the bare bones and the brick. So we thought we would utilize that as a way to fundraise. So with the event, we began the fundraiser. We've had 2 performances since then. They were very successful, and it's been a great way to bring that there. I thought it was rather ironic that the Pittman was one of the first places in Gadsden to get air conditioning, and now it's been the last to get it. But efforts are on the way, and we hope to help in where we can.
Air conditioning specialist?
Yeah, that's where I
Mental
go.
artist. Mental artist? Oh, he's an artist, okay.
Yes, he's a welding supervisor at Augusta Tech.
Oh, really?
And he's a metal artist.
That's neat.
Yeah, it is. It'll be really cool. And the
And y'all been working on this how long?
he has started last fall, and this right here, this is mosaic artwork in the uncovered.
Okay, it's covered up. So some of the pictures are covered up.
Right. And then he's hanging this on the trip to the Pittman, where he's air conditioned, and it still says that above it now.
That's awesome. Yeah. It's gonna be interesting.
Yeah, I think so. That's a good word.
Yeah. Because air conditioning is a great thing.
It's cool.
Yes.
I mean, it's art and it's just being cool, you know.
Yes, it is. It's a blessing to have.
They have to have air conditioning for elderly people. Have to have air conditioning because the people have strokes during summer. My mother had a stroke because of the heat one year, and air conditioning is a very important part of our lives.
In hospitals, when they put air conditioners in hospitals, people actually
more comfortable.
sure they get well quicker. They probably even survive in some cases. Where it's just a borderline situation. But yeah, definitely.
One of the biggest improvements in our lifestyle today, anything that I can think of, is air conditioning, because we wouldn't think about buying a home today without air conditioning. You wouldn't think about buying an automobile without air conditioning. And when it breaks, the first thing you do is call somebody, get it fixed as quick as you can. Because you don't even go home if air conditioning is broken down. Through the roof, you could look up through the night and see the stars through the shingles in the house that I was raised in. That's how poor we was. That you could actually lay in bed and look around that way and see the stars in the sky. I don't think that air conditioning was it might have been around in 1929, I really don't know. I remember going to church back in those days, and I grew up in a singing family. They have all day singing in the churches, and they'd have the windows open, no air conditioning, and they had the old hand fans, Women sat there and fan, and sweat just poured off of them, but the place would be crowded, be people everywhere, and I remember those days that you could hear singing. Wait till you get there because the windows was open, and the revival meetings too was that way back in the early church days in the 30s and 40s. I'm very grateful for air conditioning because I look back and I don't know how we even existed without it. But we did somehow, and other people, it did exist back those days. I believe people live longer with it today because a lot of people have breathing problems, and if you don't have a good, cool place to live, people that's got lung problems. In fact, my wife has had almost 2/3 of a lung removed, and she has to be in a place where it's just easy to breathe. And she functions and does real well with it, but if she didn't have air conditioning at home, it would be very difficult for her.
The Fathers of Cool. Thank you, Carrier, Crossway, and Jones, and all of the feet in your footsteps. Thank you for hospitable hospitals and habitable homes during record-breaking heat waves. For chocolate bars that melt in your mouth and not in their wrappers. Thank you for making Sunday sermons far less itchy and Sunday suppers no longer sticky. For quietly cool nurseries saving the sanity of 1,000 Southern mothers. Thank you for the Frosty Princess, comfortable Saturdays at the cinema. For cold tile floors on summer mornings and classrooms in early June. Thank you for cars that don't mess up her hair and thighs that don't stick to his chair. For bearable, breathable Augusts and the birth of the cool.
Bobby was riding his Segway down the aisle here. He had Marilyn on there. She was able to navigate that. I saw Rick get on it, and Rick was bouncing back and forth like he was on a yo-yo.
Marilyn was just spinning around like a top, man. It was great. We love celebrities to get on that thing. You could be one of them.
But Bobby was there. Coming back in, I asked if he would spend some time with us on the events that are unfolding for the 3rd of July and the 4th of July. I know there's several events happening downtown as well as the exhibition at the Cultural Arts Center. Bobby, bring us up to speed.
We chose the 4th of July as the date to unveil this air conditioning tribute project. We've been working for 2 years, it seems, really about 18 months, on this $25,000 art piece that we purchased and awarded, and the winning artist is Thomas Lyles from Augusta, but grew up in East Gadsden.
No, East Gadsden.
That's right. And so we're unveiling the sculpture at 2 o'clock. We ask that people gather in the community room of the Hardin Center for Cultural Arts at 2 o'clock. Kay Moore, who's chairman of the foundation, will recognize special guests, and we've invited President Obama down, okay? I mean, we've sent invitations to everybody who matters.
Now, let me interject here now. My understanding is that Peter Gregerson is the person that really spearheaded this.
He is. Pete is the chairman of the Air Conditioning Tribute Committee. It's Peter, it's Willie Mays, it was Roger Quinn, Vanessa Glenn Porter, and Bubba Masters and Kay is the Air Conditioning Tribute Committee, and I have the pleasure of serving as their secretary because it's under the foundation. And we've had writing, we've had poetry contests, essay competitions. We held this artist competition, and the work's going to blow your way. Yuck, yuck, yuck. It's it does actually blow air at you. It has spinning carousels. It's somewhat whimsical. It's almost a living room setting. It has a video that goes with it, and will be across the aisle from the coffee shop.
Let me interject a trivia question for you. What was the first air conditioner and how did it operate?
Wow, man, I guess it was a fan blowing across ice in a hospital down in Pensacola, and that guy's name wasn't Willis Avalon Carrier.
That was the first.
And they named a bridge after him in Pensacola.
That was the way that they were cooling in the hospital.
People heal better because of air conditioning. I mean, there really is a reason that we should say thank you for air conditioning. The South would not be what it is. We would not have Mercedes building cars in Alabama if it weren't for air conditioning. We wouldn't have Honda next door building cars. We just plain live better. But people heal better.
And myself, I was 21 years old before I had a house with air conditioning. I'd been married 3 years before we lived in a house with air conditioning. So that's how.
So you remember your first experience with air conditioning?
Oh, I remember definitely. We bought a house. My wife and I purchased a house from the Callens. We moved into it, and it had a window unit in it. And that was the first time in my life that I had experienced air conditioning. And that's how recent it is with air
I remember it myself. It is one of those things, and it won't be long till there won't be any first generation air conditioner appreciators left. And it'll all be the young people who take things for granted. And so it is important to say thank you for things that have changed our lives.
Then starting what, 2 o'clock?
2 o'clock. Peter Gregerson talks about why we ought to be thankful for air conditioning. And Thomas Lyles unveils his sculpture. 4 o'clock watermelon eating contest. 6 o'clock sweet tea tasting, winners announced, then the ice cream winners announced. And then at 7:30 we had previously said let's go to the lawn of City Hall and watch the production of the movie To This Point that we've made, paying tribute to air conditioner. But it's a chance of rain, it's a lot of trouble, it's hot, it's humid, so we've changed the location to be inside the air-conditioned, cool Hardin Center for Cultural Arts to watch the movie. Well, so first Friday, we've got a 90-pound block of ice that we're going to set out. I'm trying to figure out if I can get it down to the country club's refrigerator system before 9, before you go off the air. Maybe we'll bring it down there because you were wanting to see how long you could sit on it. And that might be fun.
As long as Mario's filming. Right there. I'll do it. If you get it down there in time, Bobby, I will sit on the block of ice as I'm live on the radio and see how long I can last.
You could set the bar.
We'll set the bar. Okay.
We lived in never get a house we lived in between professional baseball season in Decatur, Georgia. And what we did is there were 3 bedrooms down the hallway, and we would take everybody open the windows, and we put a table in the middle of the hallway, put an electric fan about 12 inches, and blow it toward the living room, and hope that we'd draw enough air through the windows to where everybody wouldn't just burn up at night. I guess first time I ever saw air conditioning was a friend of Dad's was with Westinghouse, and they had the window air conditioner, Westinghouse window air conditioner. This is probably back 1952 or 53, something like that. And, world of modern day, boy, a window air conditioner. So what you do is so you didn't spend too much money with the electrical stuff, you would only turn it on at night. So you'd have it in the bedrooms, and so you sweltered all day but slept cool. First time I remember a central heating and air. First time I remember it was the mom and dad bought a house. It was my freshman year in high school, so it had to be 1949. And we bought a house over on Montevallo Road in Birmingham between Mountain Brook and Crestline. It had a central heat and air. I couldn't believe it, the thing about it is that it changed the atmosphere of doing business because, I remember my father saying, when you get into a business deal and you're sitting in a hot room, you do it as quick as you can. Now you don't think about those kind of things. You make a presentation or whatever it is, doesn't make any difference because it's cool. Shopping, people didn't know any difference because there wasn't any air conditioning, so it didn't make any difference. Now, if you didn't have air conditioning and everything, people wouldn't go. Can you imagine sitting in a restaurant and it's 92 degrees and you're trying to eat?
In the practice of law, this would be in addition. Hugh Patterson, I went with Hugh Patterson, who became a mayor of Gadsden. He was a real estate lawyer, and that's what I became. I went to court only 6 or 7 times in 20 years of practicing law. And they had the old, actually from the reading of the history of air conditioning, one of the first was putting ice in a window or an outside window and then pulling the air through that water or ice, cold water, cool water, ice. That was the first air conditioning, which was done in one of the presidents that was sick, that with some sort of disease, that they designed that system for him in the hospital, in his home or the hospital. And that was about 1880. That system actually was what we used in that law office at 312 Chestnut Street by Mr. Patterson, Sam Patterson, that owned the abstract company.
We lived in a large 2-story house, and our rooms were upstairs. And we had large windows on each side, so we would open those windows, and that was our air conditioning, the wind coming across. And then at night, we would sometimes, in hot weather, we would sleep outside on the top of the porch. We had small mattresses, and if it started raining, we'd just come in. We spent a lot of time outside. We had porches, and we spent outside on the porch a lot of times. We just didn't stay inside much, and that's how we adapted without air conditioning. And we got hot, we'd go jump in the creek, a series of creeks around the house, or the lake. But that's how we stayed cool. But no one had air conditioning, to my knowledge, in that area.
Do you think air conditioning has a role in justice in the courts? Or?
Well, I think one thing is if you got a long, lengthy trial and anything, I think people will be more tendent to stay in court and not run out and get a quick verdict. And also, as far as protection of records of the courts, the moisture staying out of the records and keeping them, I think air conditioning has contributed quite a bit to that.
It took me about 2 months, and then it showed up on eBay. And, I wanted the original. I found some prints, but I wanted the original book with Willis Carrier. I think it's 1949. Let me see on the inside. I think it's on the inside. First page or two. Copyright. Let's see. Let's put over here.
And there he is.
1949.
This is him?
That's him.
That is him.
That is the father of Cool. I'm hoping what happened is this thing will slide in and out. Yep. That's what I want to happen. That's probably you back in about 1966. Yeah, you'd been about 5, 6, something like that. And but she's happy. She's got a reference of everything. It's just some of the components that make up this project, this sculpture.
Most of my life, part of my life I did not know air conditioning. We lived in a house without air conditioning.